Welcome to the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast, the go-to place to gain financial freedom through real estate investing. Here we interview investors, mentors, and entrepreneurs who share their secrets and advice to help you build passive income. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, this is Augustino. For many of you out there, you spend a great deal of time building a portfolio of real estate. Deciding what you want to have happen to your portfolio after you're gone is key to estate planning. Putting a plan together ahead of time will save your family from costly taxes and provide clarity of what you want to happen after you pass. Well, today's guests are not only attorneys, but they're also experts at real estate. Aside from helping syndicators with SEC filings and putting deals together with investors, they also advise on estate planning. After working with other law firms that specialized in everything from litigation to government relations, these brothers kicked off their own firm in 2016. And since then, their firm, Vincent Esquire, has found a great deal of success building and developing their own real estate-focused law firm. They also have their own upcoming podcast called Here's the Deal. It's centered around real estate as well and law. And with that, I'd like to welcome Adam and Paul Vincent to the show. Hey, guys, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Augustino, thanks so much.
Thanks a lot.
I appreciate that plug. I mean, I think we should just put that on our website.
I'm
it's
impressed.
Better. I'd hire me.
Awesome.
It's good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before we go on, if you like what Paul and Adam have to say, you can reach them via their website at vincentesquire.com. And of course, if you like our content, please don't forget to leave a comment and rate the show. All right, guys, maybe go ahead and tell the listeners about how you got your start in real estate and why law.
Yeah, well, you did a great job there. So I've been a lawyer for a little over 10 years or about 10 years or so. And I've always, for whatever reason, I've always liked history. And I always thought real estate was a neat practice area that kind of wove that in, driving by big buildings or seeing projects that were starting from the ground up. And I always felt that was something I was initially drawn to. And then having spent a good deal of time in litigation where people fight over $1,000 or several $100,000, nobody has fun doing that. The winning side still loses. The losing side really loses. And it's just not a happy outcome. So, I mean, from my point of view, real estate transactions, business transactions, even estate planning, all those things are generally very happy outcomes. And that's just a much more fun way to do business. So we've tried, we still do a decent bit of litigation, but that's not something we're chasing after to get paid for. So, real estate is and estate planning is. And here we are. And thanks so much for having us on here.
Yeah, excellent. Well, let's dive into the whole estate planning thing. And for those that are not really familiar, why is it even important to have an estate plan in the first place?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, the most simple one is that you can have choice over what happens when that unfortunate day comes along, what happens to your stuff, where it goes. And if you don't have one in place, you're essentially at the mercy of this state laws, and it usually goes to your family as you'd expect, but it requires going to a probate court and getting things sorted out. And again, you don't have that control if you wanted to do something differently with your stuff. Also, if you're just in terms of business, business interests, those are treated differently than just, say, a car or a house or that sort of thing. So depending on how the business was set up and the documents behind it and everything, there can be all kinds of different things that can happen. Having control over that is obviously a really valuable thing for people, right, and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and when you're saying business, I mean, obviously, you're even talking to like these multifamily deals, for instance. Like even if you're a part owner or a GP or even an LP in a deal, that is technically a business. And if something passes, you don't have an estate plan, the government is now getting involved with how to allocate all that money and what happens to the asset, as far as your part is concerned, right?
Right. Yeah, and we talked a little bit earlier before we started recording this about, hey, where's your membership interest go? Like, even the LPs, it may not be that you want that passive income going into just your trust or your key man insurance taking over your interest in an apartment complex. Let's say you just bought it and you're adding value, or maybe you bought it and you've already added value and it's worth a lot more than what you're actually insured for. So, and every operating agreement has those details, but some things to think about is, hey, where's my interest go? If you're a husband or a wife or just have someone that you want to direct that interest to, you want to make sure that stuff's in place. If it's not, then it's too late when something bad happens. And that's a simple thing that not many people think about because they see like, hey, I just took down this 150 units 18 months ago. We're cashing out. Things are great. And then if something bad were to happen, we have clients that they don't want their interest just purchased out because they know that's not the true value of that. They want their family to keep living off that cash cow. And, we help people get there.
Right. Because ultimately it comes down to what you're actually looking to build. Like I'm looking to build a legacy that can pass on to my kids and down the line. So I honestly don't want to sell anything.
Yep.
But at the same time too, I can define that in the estate plan and even segregate out who gets what at what point.
Right. And whether we need to get any minutia today, but yeah, you can define all that stuff. You have a trust. You can have an advisory board of people helping, your spouse or your children down the road make decisions about things. But one of the things we see most often is people, especially, with either young families or even folks that have had children that have all moved out of the house. They just haven't gone to that place to be like, okay, now we need to decide some things. And obviously most of that reason is because who likes talking about death? It's not fun.
Right.
But when we hear from people, it's usually when something really great's happened, like they took down a big apartment complex or they just had their first or fifth baby, whatever that is, or their parents or their brother or their aunt or uncle or somebody just passed away. So they're like, oh crap, now we should get off the fence and knock that out. And we see often that it's not a fun thing to do. So when we discuss with them, they're on board, they're excited, and then you send them the stuff to, some of their homework to do, and they take a break, and then we hear from them like 90, 180 days later, and it's understandable. It's just not a fun thing to do. And a lot of folks have never even thought about it until they talk to us. So yeah, just where's my junk going? That's what we help people with all the time.
It's one of those cognitive biases.
Right.
And I talk a lot about mindset in our meetups and also in our program as well, that we seem to believe that it'll always happen to someone else and not to us. Those bad things happen to, it'll happen to Joe Schmo down the street. They're going to get sick and pass away tomorrow, but it'll never happen to me. And we were talking in the green room earlier about how I have someone fairly close to the family that just, he's in his late 40s, got sick, went to the hospital. Next thing you know, he's got cancer and he's dead 2 weeks later. That's it.
Yep. It's just crazy.
Right. And who knows if he had the capacity to even prepare his estate. And 2 weeks, I don't even know if it's enough, right? It really depends on how complex your estate is. But the point is that it's something that if you have any type of assets that are worth something, you really need to have all that stuff squared away before the government gets involved. And once they get their claws in it, your family might not end up with anything. And all that work that you've put into building whatever it is your business is, it's all gone, basically, or has the potential of being gone, right?
Right. Yeah, we can, unfortunately, speak from experience. One of the reasons why we're passionate about stuff is, we were in the same boat. We grew up very lucky. Our parents were very happy, and we were all very happy kids. And then our older brother, when he was 34, driving home from work, and a stupid semi truck pulled out in front of him, and he got killed. So, very quickly you realize that you're a number just like everybody else. And even maybe, you obviously, like you just said, nothing like that happens to me or my family because it never had up to that point. Really, people got old and everyone passed away, of course. But that was the first thing. It was like, holy cow. And he passed away at 34. We owned a pizza shop with him. And he didn't, he had two brothers that were lawyers and he didn't have anything done. He didn't have his estate plan together and all that stuff. So that's another reason why we get a kick out of helping people is because we know like I said, we're very blessed. There wasn't any fighting or kicking and screaming when the bad news came out. But it's really simple for it to happen where people start chasing after dollars and fighting and all, blaming people and stuff like that. So just get it done and you can save everybody the hassle later.
Right.
Yep. And if you have the chance, you might have a abrupt bad news, or you might have 2 weeks or you might have 2 months. But either way, if it takes just the average person or couple 6-12 months to make these decisions on their own with a straight mindset. Imagine if you had those other factors involved and throwing that stress into the whole situation.
Nothing's more awkward than taking a power of attorney to a hospital room, be like, hey, you need to sign this so we can, it's like, it's uncomfortable. You don't know how to do it. No one knows how to do it. And just get it done while you're happy and smiling.
Well, and that's the thing though, too, I think, and we talked a little bit about that too, is getting out of your comfort zone. And nobody wants to hand that piece of paper over because it's kind of like acknowledging, guess what, buddy? You're going to the other side. So you better sign this piece of paper. It's got to acknowledge
you're worried.
Whether or not it's going to happen, we don't know, but that's what you're saying, and nobody wants to have that discussion. We're really adverse to having that, but the long and short of it is, unfortunately, we have an expiration date. So maybe go through what does someone need to do when they say I'm engaging with you today? What would I need to do to get everything in order to let you guys work your magic and really prepare for what needs to happen?
Yeah, so basically, we just have to get a picture of your situation. We have a questionnaire that helps do that, but essentially, sit down or get on a phone call and talk about all the property you have and your current situation and what your goals are. And essentially, that gets the ball rolling on whether a lot of listeners might just need a will and aren't at the point yet where they need like a trust or anything more complicated at this point. So you kind of sit down, look at the situation, and then talk about goals and where you're at, and then figure out which documents and mechanisms are best fit for you.
Everybody should have the kind of the big, most common four. It's a will, it's a living will, it's a healthcare power of attorney, and a durable financial one. When you bonk your head, maybe you can't make financial or healthcare decisions for yourself, you should have somebody there to help make those, surgical decisions or cut those checks to the mortgage company or something like that. And those are the powers of attorney. Living will is how do you want to be cared for at your end of life care? So, do you want to live on a machine for some period of time or not at all? That's what a living will is. And obviously a will, the last will and testament is where does my stuff go when and if I pass away? And then those are the four. But even before, getting to the will, there's a lot of non-probate transfers. Like if you're married, that's a survivorship deed, transfer on death affidavits for real estate and your business interest, and payable on death accounts for business, for bank accounts and things. There's a lot of really simple things to do and are very cost effective. You don't need to come and spend thousands upon thousands to get these big four done. So what we do, like Adam said, is get together, talk about it, and then we send some information to you, for the client to fill out, and then we just kind of go from there.
Right. So, well, let's go through a couple scenarios and just to help the listeners better understand this. So let's say, for instance, I'm an investor. I'm invested in 20 different deals as a GP across a bunch of multifamily deals. And I have a wife and a son. And the son is with say, an ex or something like that, right? If I pass away, it doesn't necessarily, unless she's on the LLC paperwork or whatever, if something happens to me, she's going to be fighting for whatever she can get. And conceivably, my son would not get anything. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yeah. And like we talked about in the green room, it just depends. Like, so you have, hopefully every LLC will have an operating agreement. It should define like, hey, what happens when a member leaves involuntarily? Usually involuntarily is like you're going to jail or you're dead. So most times it's when you pass away. So there should be some language in there for that. But that's one of the things we talk about is like, okay, you got to give me all of your businesses, and then we got to review what do your operating agreements say. And a lot of times, if it's not well defined, there's not horror stories, but there's stories where somebody who might be a managing member of an LLC, and it doesn't necessarily say who's going to replace that person. It ends up being that a spouse through a probate court gets ordered to be this, have a membership interest in this LLC. So just taking the time to sit down, having your stuff stacked and having a chance to look at it all, and then just kind of taking those next steps. But in that scenario's case, you'd want to make sure either that membership interest is purchased, at death, and then you want to make sure that there's a mechanism to control that. Like, how many times, I don't know, but it could very likely happen that a member passes away and then there's this operating agreement and then everybody just forgets about the important part of paying off the spouse, and you don't want your spouse to come having to hunt people down and, getting lawyers involved and all that. So just make sure that stuff, and this is stuff you should be talking about with your partners upon creation of that LLC. It's like, hey, does everybody here want to just get bought out? Or if you don't, let's talk about how we can do that.
Yeah. And just a general theme of this whole conversation is what Paul is just touching on, is that people are excited when they're acquiring real estate, building their business, doing all those fun things. And then hopefully are excited about operating it well and then knocking out of the park there. But what they aren't thinking about is that third stage is exit stage, or either whether it's forced or voluntary exit or not. What happens on that back end. And so, like Paul said, sometimes the operating agreements are set up. No one's even thinking about that later stage. And so if you're already started, you got to go back and see what it is you've agreed to in your operating agreement and see if that's something that all the members agree on. And if not, do we need to change something or do something, figure out some other remedy?
Right. And for those that maybe, for instance, maybe they didn't even set it up in the operating agreement. So you guys would actually help them by going back and resolving all that and adding an amendment or whatever needs to be changed in the operating agreement, right? For some of those guys who don't think about it.
Yep. And I mean, I would say 85% of people have no idea. They're like, I don't know, the one guy just had a lawyer or he had a template. We just filled in the names and the percentage interest and stuff like that. So I mean, that happens all the time. So it's one of the things we enjoy out of meeting with folks is it's probably the first time they've ever thought about that. Like how many people that have been married for 40 years don't know if they're really a joint with rights of survivorship bank account. So we help people with that all the time. And just, it's an opportunity to be like, hey, look, this is the stuff we have. Let's set it up in a way that it's the simplest when tragedy or just nature happens, and it'll make it as easy as it can be under the circumstance to transfer it to your spouse or to your children or whoever your beneficiary is.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, it's just what you just said a second ago too. It's with the excitement of acquiring your real estate, you're trying to do it as fast as you can.
We're all friends.
Yeah, we're all friends. We're all buddies. Yeah, it's a big love fest, and then then something happens, or maybe maybe your partner ends up going to jail for some other reason, not related to the business. And now what happens? Now you have a new partner that might step in.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Mr. IRS, how are you?
Right. That's right. IRS comes in now and they have a new partner. Yeah. Great. Super duper. Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Uncle Sam's nice. He's always been nice.
That's right. So I know that there's the estate tax exemption in 2012. How does that impact anything, if at all?
Yeah. I mean, so, you just got to take into account what your pool of assets are worth. But generally speaking, that's something that can be ballparked, and then you can plan for that. Like people that are getting into it now, if their trajectory continues, I mean, they're going to blow the exemption out of the water. So that's stuff you just basically have to plan for. It's almost like you got to put it on the books like a dentist. Every 6 months let's touch base, or every quarter. I mean, one of the things we enjoy too is it's a good relationship builder. Selfishly, it's just a way where if you can get a client to trust you to help consider taking care of their children in the future and things. It's very flattering to us when people decide to use us, and we think we're kind of easier to talk to than maybe some. That's just what we like to do. So help people check that box off and move forward to being a good mom or dad or good business partner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with that estate tax stuff and everything, I mean, you can plan some things you can't do anything about necessarily, but you can plan and maybe find there are some mechanisms out there that can help make it a little more favorable.
Right. So how would that happen? And let's say, for instance, great, so I pass and I split everything 50-50 between, say, the wife and the son in that previous example. How are taxes handled? Like, are they suddenly now saddled with a bunch of taxes, or how does that end up working?
Yeah, it would come, the taxes would get paid for first. So they're going to get their things without the burden of having to handle on, all this expensive new stuff. So that'll all get taken care of. If you have a trust, the trustee will help with that, or any sort of business advisor, your tax, professional and stuff. And any lawyer that probably put it together will probably be the same lawyer that helps mow through the stuff. So, yeah, I mean, that'll be kind of an individual thing. It's a lot of hand-holding, a lot of discussing with, let's say the child is still a minor, whoever the obviously probably the remaining parent that's still on it is going to have to be advised on how it's going to look. And in the trust, it'll have more than likely an account set up just for that, and the trustee will, manage that. Because we see somewhat often a spouse wanting to ensure that an ex-spouse doesn't get that chunk and that it just goes to the children. So in the trust world, they call that the pool boy exemption, which not a nice way to do it, but that's basically what it is that you want to make sure that your stuff goes to your lineal descendants and not to the new husband or after you pass away. So that's stuff that gets taken care of.
Right. And now, and how are taxes handled then in terms of, like, say, tax rate or anything else like that?
Yeah, we don't talk about taxes. We work a lot with tax professionals, so we let them just come on board, and we don't really advise. And we take into account, obviously, the exemption and how we have to try to do our best to escape that. But, we basically just say, let's get the account on board. And it's a triangle kind of relationship.
Right. Yep.
Right.
We don't keep track of the day-to-day, IRS memos and stuff like that, because it's just another thing that we don't have time to read. So
yeah, we just put usually a team together. Yeah.
Yeah, we just team up.
Yeah, but what's important though is that there will be a tax implication, though, is what it sounds like, regardless, right? It will happen.
Yeah, if you get to thousands upon thousands of units in multifamily, or you own a business that's doing really well, and you're this single member, or they get the exemption is 11.5, or is it can you get there quick. If you have big assets that are worth several $1 million, in a little wing of west side of Cleveland, you can get there pretty quick. So.
Right. What do you have any advice in terms of how to? I'm not going to say escape it, because I don't think there's any escape 100%. But is there a way
Sure.
to put it into a trust, or maybe hold in the asset somewhat differently, or is there any way to try to minimize that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, one business consideration obviously is sharing membership interest. Like you're married and you want to do stuff 50-50, that's one thing to think about. Is that your value could legit be cut in half. So if you did pass away, you cuts your liability on that side, chances in half. And yeah, you just want to set it up. Have trust for your kids, trust for the your family. I mean, there's a number of creative ways to do it. Some people are philanthropically motivated, so set up charitable trust that way. Just to kind of spread out the asset pool, which is a good problem to have.
Right. Well, then conceivably, if we are setting it up as a trust, say for a minor child, if there is a liquidation event, say to sell off the portfolio or sell off a portion of that asset, that cash would then end up in that trust account, I imagine. And then say I wouldn't want my son to have access to that account till he's 18 or whatever.
Yeah, and there would be a trustee involved in that, and they would be the one to kind of keep an eye on everything. They're actually, the fiduciary of the trust, and they're obligated by law to do a good job. And some people just use banks for that, but you can use attorneys, you can use friends and family that you trust, tax professionals, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, that's probably the one thing to consider is who would that be? Who do you want to be your trustee? Do you have a lawyer you like, or do you have a brother or sister or relative you like? But that's the goal of everybody, is not. So, and then with that trust, you can define it as complex as you want. If you want your son to have, X dollars at 21 or 28 or whatever it is, you can define all that out.
Right. And that's the idea, is you get some control over it. You can spell out how it's distributed and how you think it can be best distributed in the interest of that child who's getting some big dollars at a relatively young age.
Right. Well, yeah, because they can, I mean, we're all young at one point. We've done a lot of stupid things. At least I have anyway. So
yeah, for sure. I'm still doing it. Not that young, but still doing it.
With like $50.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Just add a couple zeros.
That's right. It's not a big deal. No big deal. Great.
Right. Yeah.
What other advice do you have for the listeners as far as estate planning and as far as getting started? I mean, clearly you pointed out earlier, for whatever reason, people just don't see this as an important thing, or just, again, they don't think it's going to ever happen to them. Do you have any advice for those sorts of people out there?
Right. Just start thinking about it. Like, if you're recently married or you have a new baby, the thing you want to think about is, my most important asset, my child or children. What happens to them if we both are, flying to North Carolina for the summer and, something dreadful happens to both of us at the same time? You just got to start those conversations. You just have to bring it up one time. It doesn't need to be, lawyers in the room and all that. Just talk about it, walking your kid to the park. Like, hey, what do you think you want to do? And we're both very lucky that we have easy answers for that because we're close and, we're just lucky that way. Some people don't, they don't have a brother, a sister, or a friend. So when you don't have something like that, what do? Well, you need to start thinking about it hard. You need to start talking about it soon. So I think first things first is take into account that we're all going to pass away at some point.
Newsflash.
Yeah, that's right. On this podcast alone, we're going to talk about what nobody knows, the secret. So, and just got to get started. It's just like with everything that's hard, the hardest thing is getting started. So,
and don't be shocked if it does take time. I mean, that's not unusual.
Yep.
It's a lot of couples or a lot of individuals have questions they don't yet have an answer to, but get started. One other bit of advice is find somebody you like working with, find an attorney and other professionals, that if you don't hesitate to make the call or to answer the call with that person, that's a good fit. And that's what we kind of like, working with folks that we enjoy being around. And the same thing for lawyers. Not every lawyer is going to be a fit, and that's okay. Not everybody that comes in our office hires us, and
they get one look at us and they just jet
not
out.
a chance. But that's an important element. If you find somebody that you're going to want to work with and that's going to help you get over that goal line, if it's an office you aren't comfortable in, you're probably not. It's going to be another hurdle to get the stuff done. So,
right. Like, I got to pay this bozo. Like, I don't even like these guys. And we, and just because people call us because of referral, like we tell everybody, and we're honest, like, hey, this is the first call you've made. Shop around. I mean, people think that somebody answered the phone, I'm just going to go with them. Like, don't do that. It needs to be somebody that when something bad happens or something great happens, you want to make that call and you want to build that relationship up and work together. And that's part of the fun that we get to do is we get to pick who we want to work with, and for business and for estate planning and, like you mentioned, securities and stuff. That's fun stuff for us, and we feel very happy that we're able to do that. But you as a consumer should also do that. Make sure you like who you're working with.
Right. Now, what are your thoughts around those guys that you know what, it's a very uncomfortable situation as it is to discuss. So maybe I'll just go ahead and do it myself. I'll download the forms from the internet and just go ahead and just jot them in myself. Yeah, no, I mean, there's obviously some danger in that, but for me, that's better than not doing anything at all. If you and your wife are like, I don't want to pay anybody, or I don't have the money, I can just find the forms, or I had some other guy that thought his lawyer was a bozo and he paid him too much money for it, so I don't want to do that. I mean, that's better than nothing. So obviously we recommend, you don't know what you don't know, so just make the call just to talk about it at least. And no doubt about it, if somebody calls us, they're getting off the phone thinking about things that they never even thought of before, just because you don't do that, So if someone were to do that, I don't want to wholly discourage it and say, you're going to leave a mess for your family, but you just don't know what you don't know. So just call. Like, I don't do my own plumbing in my house. I don't know anything about plumbing. One, I'm lazy and I'm not going to do it, but I don't.
On top of that,
I don't know how to do it. So I would call a plumber. It's kind of the same thing. Like, you don't know what a will is even supposed to look like or what things you should be thinking about. So just call somebody to do it.
Yeah.
Right. I think getting that advice is going to be huge, especially the more complicated and the larger your portfolio, protecting it especially from the government.
Yeah.
To protect all that work that you've done is just absolutely paramount.
Right.
Got to do it.
Yeah. And we do simple plans for people that if 40 years from now, they're still married, or, more than likely they will never have to do it again. So that's the goal, is to do it once, do it right once. And if nothing changes, if your family's still the same and no business interest, stuff like that, you don't have to do it more than once. So.
Right. Excellent.
We help people all the time with that. Yeah.
Excellent. Good. All right. Well, guys, maybe you can tell me a little bit more about your business. So tell me about why you guys even started the firm in the first place. I know we talked about it earlier, but is there any other thing you can offer in terms of from the real estate aspect and maybe some of the things that you do aside from the estate planning side of things?
Well, the first things first is being your own boss. That's fun. It's terribly hard work, but it's, we probably got too many hugs from our mom growing up or something, but it just seemed like something we were going to do,
Yep.
That's kind of the one thing. Secondarily, I just want to be part of fun things. And when you're your own boss, you get to be part of any sort of fun thing that you want to. So the other parts of the practice, like I said, real estate, we help a lot of people with things, we started this firm under kind of a weird real estate mechanism, real estate tax certificates. So we had a client that bought, hundreds and hundreds of tax lien certificates in Ohio. We were lucky enough to have a buddy that was already handling a lot of the work down in Hamilton County. They came up north to Summit, and it's just easier when you're local for a lot of the stuff. So he called me up, and we bailed about 2 weeks later. And we saw through those tax lien certificates that real estate has all these weird mechanisms to make money. Like we'd never heard of that before. We didn't know much about, just seller financing in general, but there's all these really neat ways to make money in real estate, and we like helping people do well. So the tax liens, we moved over to, all sorts of seller financing. And then with those big transactions, we saw, securities, and we just kind of piggybacked all these differing things. And, you end up stumbling into something new, So, and estate planning was, like we mentioned earlier, our older brother passed away, and we just saw that it's a simple thing that not a lot of people do. And we just want to help them check off that box.
Yeah. And just getting into real estate, and all your listeners know, it's just an area that's just fascinating. There's just so many different mechanisms and so many different options and what you can do with real estate. And it's a lot of opportunity and things. So, we like being problem solvers and helping people. And it's an area where you can do that every single day. So, I think that's something that
there's all
definitely
these
attracted us.
conferences that we get to go to too. Like, everyone just does a conference. It's always in a cool place. It's like, yeah, let's do that.
Get on podcasts.
Get on podcasts, right?
Of course. So there's also the podcast.
And it's like
right?
it's definitely the most networking of practice areas. You're not really networking for personal injury or any type of other kind of practice area in law. So that's one of the things too. We like meeting strangers and helping them build their business and stuff. And real estate is an area that it's like there's a networking event, every 15 minutes in Northeast Ohio. So
it's actually true.
It's a good thing to get out there. Yeah.
Well, that's the good thing about real estate is that it is a team sport. And the only way you build success is, in my opinion anyway, is to network with other people and team up, to especially take on those larger deals. That's the best way to do it.
Right.
It's the best way to do it.
We're essentially looking for friends.
Yeah, we're just looking for friends. Really, our only way to make friends is this job. That's okay.
Well, the good thing is that you guys are basically a full-stop shop, right? You guys will do the SEC filings, you'll do the contract negotiation, and of course, even the very important estate planning. What happens at the end when your clients are building up all this portfolio of real estate? What happens to it afterwards? I mean, that's absolutely key, especially for those guys out there that are trying to build a legacy. It's very important.
Yep,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, and like. Someone hopefully is listening to this thing and thinking like, oh yeah, I never thought about what my interest does when I pass away. Like, I don't know. It's just going to be a big chunk of money, but I don't have a will. So where does that go? And we got to get a probate court and get this testamentary trust put together for the kids, so yeah, hopefully your listeners first, of course, thanks for having us on, but hopefully they are now thinking about the fun world of death.
Problems, chaos.
Well, you know what it is, though. I think it's for many. They assume that if things go south for them and they're get an untimely demise, everything just falls back to their spouse. And just as we already covered, it doesn't always go that way. It doesn't fall directly to the spouse or the kids without a whole lot of other involvement by some not so nice strangers, not the strangers you meet at the conferences, that will define and decide what happens to something that you spent 20 years building. It's not the way I would imagine for most people out there. It's not the way they want to see their portfolio, their legacy be handled after their demise.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, excellent. All right, guys. Well, if you guys want to follow up with Paul and Adam, you can reach them via the website at vincentesquire.com. Hope you got a lot of great insight on asset protection and estate planning. It's huge. Thank you so much for your time, guys. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot. Congratulations on you. This podcast is doing great, and you just keep adding gazillions of assets under management. So keep it up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We're not stopping anytime soon, man. We're blowing it up.
Good for you. All right, buddy. Thanks a lot.
All right. See you guys.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast. For more free podcasts, articles, videos, and resources, go to www.bulletproofcashflow.com.